Good morning, my friends. Today it's another beautiful sunny day. Few scattered clouds, pretty much the same as it was yesterday. So today I've sort of thought about, how I could sort of expand this Mornings with wosX segment into different territories, and I'm thinking for every Friday I'll do a book review, and for every Monday I will do a movie review. So today I have a book for Friday. This is a book called The Magus of Java. If you can see that there. This is a book that was recommended to me from a friend of mine, and I read through it. It was around 2 years ago. This is when I first started getting into the more esoteric energy qigong type of things, and it's it's a realm of activity that a lot of people don't really identify with, or they just don't believe in it. They think it's a lot of pseudoscience, which is understandable given the age we live in, the age of absolute science and the absolute reason, where anything that's sort of mysterious or not fully understood is considered fake, or if you can't prove it with math and physics, then it's not real, which I think is a very limiting way to look about things, but that's another discussion altogether. The book in and of itself is written by Costa Danaus. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's a Greek guy who was very interested in martial arts, and he sought out this guy from what he saw was a documentary of a Taoist immortal. It's not actually technically immortal, but I can get more into that later on. His nickname was Dynamo Jack, or better known as just John Chang, and he lived in, I believe, Indonesia. And he's an acupuncturist. I believe he's still practicing, although I think he's gotten a lot more recluse since the publishing of this book, since a lot of people are seeking him out. But he is an acupuncturist, and he was supposed to have some sort of supernatural powers, so to speak, right? He had what people would call supernatural anyways, but it's very it's nothing out of the ordinary in terms of regular science. What he could do was basically conduct a form of electricity, or chi as you would like to call it, and this could help people heal themselves, right? It's a way of energizing your body. This is where acupuncture and all pretty much traditional Chinese medicine is based around this Taoist philosophy. So he journeys to Indonesia, visits John Chang, and it basically goes through his story of training with him, and the style is called I believe Neigong. I forget. Or yeah, it's called Mopai. Is one of them. There's a lot of different names that you can call it, or there's Kung Fu or whatever, but it's not really important because everyone you learn from has their own different technique and style of doing things, because that's basically what it's all about. If you learn about Bruce Lee, for instance, that was his big claim to fame, was that he didn't believe in following a strict, rigid academic way of martial arts. He did it in his own way and followed his own path of understanding the martial art. So, going back to the book, I believe that there is a lot of it that's sort of, put up as a spectacle, right? It's not, I feel like a lot of it is definitely over exaggerated, especially like the stories about the old ancient masters and how powerful they were and the abilities that they acquired. But there are a lot of elements that I personally do believe in. I am generally skeptical always about these sort of things, because I care more about understanding the truth than about wanting to believe in something that may or may not exist. And after my own understanding and journey or whatever into learning about these kinds of things and feeling it for myself and seeing how it benefited me in the first place, I realized that there is a lot of truth to these kinds of things. And I think this is a really good book to anybody who doesn't know anything about this sort of thing, because it's a very interesting and compelling story, and it sort of gets you sort of amped up whenever you read it to sort of want to learn more, to want to develop it. And you know, you don't really get much technique. You get a little bit. You get more of like the philosophy or the basic understandings, the actual rigid training, and you know, that you would do, the very academic sort of stuff, the specific rigid guidelines that you would want to follow would come more from something from there's another author called Damo Mitchell who writes a lot of like interesting stuff about that, and he goes very in depth and he's very legit. If you want to find someone who's legit at this kind of thing, literally just look at their face, see how old they are. You can just tell, like, if someone is really like in depth with this kind of shit, you would just see that they just don't age like a normal person. Like they're like 70 years old and they look like they're 40, and it's pretty surreal to look at. And you know, you look at these people and it's like, all right, well, they're doing something right. Obviously what they're doing is not bullshit if it's literally working for them. And you know, there's a lot of masters, there are a lot of fake people out there, because it's easy to make up shit like this, because it's not a rigid, you know, scientific thing. It's like this very esoterical and very out there. So it's very easy to just sort of make up and say like, ooh, you just feel it. And you have a lot of fake people out there, a lot of fake masters, a lot of fake teachers who aren't, you know, they just aren't legit. And you can tell when you watch some of these videos online of some of these fake people, and they just are all fat, old, out of shape. They just look terrible because, you know, they're not actually doing anything. They're just, it's all about their ego. You find videos of like the real guys, they're in very good shape, they look good. You know, usually they're pretty old, they're like in their 50s or 60s, and they look in, you know, top shape. And they're not in the, you know, usually the traditional martial art outfit or like a gi or anything like that. And they're not in a big dojo with a bunch of like, you know, lesser followers. You know, they're just like in their apartment and they're wearing like very normal clothes. They just look like normal everyday people. And that's sort of the thing about this kind of thing. If you want to learn about it, you're going to have to dig deep and find people who are legit, and unfortunately those are far and few between, because a lot of people just want to make shit up to make some money. And that's kind of you know, it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because a lot of this stuff you know, potentially can be dangerous in terms of who can acquire it, right? A lot of people can attain this kind of power, so to speak, and do something that's not exactly, you know, beneficial. It can be pretty destructive in a lot of ways, both to other people and to yourself, if it's not used carefully. And that's why, you know, if you're interested in learning about that kind of thing, I do not recommend taking it lightly or taking it like as a joke. It's very, I wouldn't say it's serious. You should always sort of be light and free flowing, but don't take it as you know, something to just play around with or something to force. You got to be very careful, because you might damage yourself. You might do things improperly and it might hurt yourself physically. And you see that a lot of times with some other people who don't really understand it fully, and they end up hurting their organs, and they end up fucking up their bodies, which is a very dangerous thing to do, and you don't want to get involved in that kind of thing. Not to mention it can mess with your head. You know, a lot of people who get involved in this kind of thing, they develop this like very big ego, and very like become delusional, and they start thinking themselves as like a god or something like that, and they think that they're better than everyone, and it creates a delusional mindset where they think they're right about everything. And it's not good to be like that, because you need to always be humble and true to yourself and not get carried away with certain things. And it's going to happen to anyone. I feel like anyone who goes through that will go through a phase where they think that that they're better than everyone, and you kind of just have to bring yourself down. Otherwise, you can end up isolating yourself and just destroying your psyche or your ability to develop as a human being or develop in this specific thing. So anyway, it's a good book, entertaining. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't believe everything in here is absolute truth, so to speak. I feel like a lot of it was emphasized to create sort of an interest in what this is, but there is a lot of real stuff in here that I feel like people should definitely take into account. And also, John Chang is definitely a real guy. You can watch his videos, you can believe it or you can not believe it. I personally, from watching a lot of these videos where it's like a lot of these fake masters, it seems a lot more legit than some of the other people, and that's just from my own opinion. You can have your own opinion, obviously. It's hard to say what's real or what isn't, but either way, if you don't believe in it or not, it's still an interesting story and an interesting book to read, and you might find it entertaining even if you don't believe in it whatsoever. So anyway, that's it for the day, and I hope you have a wonderful day.